Hello, this is the Baton Rouge SQL Server user group for March 10th, 2021. Today's presentation is becoming a contributor to the SQL Docs with William Assaf, our former fearless leader, now turned Microsoft lackey. We're really glad to have him. We are the Baton Rouge SQL Server user group, together with our sister group, the .NET Baton Rouge .NET user group, who is having their meeting concurrently with us right now. You can check us out at BRSSUG.org and them at BRDNUG.org. Yeah, we typically meet on the second or third Wednesday of every month as we figure out how to work these virtual meetings from now on. And with that, I'll hand it over to William.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. It's great to be speaking to my hometown user group again, and for those of you who are with us and those of you who are watching live on not live on a recording, feel free to reach out to me, wisaf@microsoft.com, with any questions you have. So this presentation is a new presentation that I've been working on as part of the SQL Docs team for Microsoft, which I joined in November. And we have a key objective to try to build the community of contributors, both internally at Microsoft from like product engineers and program managers and things like that, but also externally from folks in the field like yourself, a lot of which are already involved in contributing both Git issues and pull requests to Microsoft's documentation. I am going to effort to build that with you right now. I want to build more of this community. So you guys can see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Cool.
Yep.
So yeah, again, become a contributor to Microsoft Docs. I know I got I'm a Bill animation to some of the cartoons in here going. I understand that. You can reach us on Twitter at SQL Docs if you have any questions. So today's agenda, I'm going to talk about Rogue One inside DevRel, and I'm going to explain what both of those things are. We're going to make introductions to the SQL Docs team and talk about what we cover, how we work with the product teams inside Microsoft, and most importantly, how to contribute to SQL Docs through GitHub and what you need to know to become a contributor yourself with your little picture at the top of an article. Then we'll have plenty of time for feedback and Q&A. So a bit about the mission of the hundreds of employees inside the content and learning team at Microsoft. In short, we have two goals. We want to enable students, job seekers, and workers online with comprehensive and trusted content experiences. Mostly, we'll be talking about Docs tonight, but this also covers Learn as well and all those labs and web-based learning that you have there. And two, to build an active community of contributors to ensure that we offer a breadth, depth, and quality of content to the audiences. Well, that second goal is what we're doing this presentation for, and specifically how you can be a part of that quality Microsoft Docs experience. So I am a member of the SQL Docs team, affectionately internally known by our nickname of Rogue One. And while we're definitely violating multiple copyright laws with that image, we support tens of thousands of articles on SQL Server and the platform and all the SQL Server implementations that there are. In the Microsoft Developer Relations Group, there are over 600 folks working to deliver documentation and learning content for all Microsoft technologies, working closely with our partners on the product teams to release, augment, and maintain documentation. So what technologies does the SQL Docs team cover? We work with the product groups and program managers for everything SQL, including all its various flavors in Azure, as well as Azure Synapse Analytics, and all the technologies under that umbrella. We also cover content for the data platform tooling, including Management Studio, Data Tools, Azure Data Studio. And we work and communicate daily with the product team engineers and program managers, both proactively when we have issues or pull requests that come from you in the community, and for issues and requests that come in via Microsoft supports or our cloud solution architects in the field, and reactively for when they come to us with new features and releases for products that need new documentation. We work collaboratively to make sure that we have new content that is correct, up to date, well linked with good metadata and good navigation. This content includes the conceptual and reference docs that you see, but also quick starts, tutorials, and FAQs. And we work with them to time document releases with their product release train. So for example, we just had Microsoft Ignite a couple weeks ago, and a lot of coordination went into making sure that docs went live at the time of the keynote, for example. We often end up working more with the product teams than we do with each other inside the SQL Docs team. So it's nice when we get to work together on a presentation like this, and my whole team has contributed and reviewed this PowerPoint presentation. And in various other formats, when we give this, there may be up to 7 of us giving this presentation jointly. So the SQL Docs team is one of many Docs teams with different products inside Microsoft's Cloud and AI DevRel team. So what is DevRel? In a greater role, DevRel is the team that involves activities that connect developers and in-house manufactured goods or services with external users. So DevRel ensures that products receive good continuous relationship through external developers through mutual communication. So DevRel definitely involves documentation, including user-friendly explanations, but also reference documentation to things like how to call an API, how to install, configure, troubleshoot, here's some code samples, things like that. DevRel in other companies, the companies that you're at, might also look like community management, issue reporting and triage, release notes for patches and new releases, focus groups, and then public interaction. Your favorite video game, for example, probably has DevRel folks to send and receive communication with the public about bug reports, troubleshooting, patch notes, manage the discussion boards, the feature requests, the mods development, and the community events. DevRel folks are technical, and we know our products well. In fact, some tech companies cycle developers in and out of DevRel positions so that DevRel folks have a keen awareness of technical detail, but also that developers see how the end user consumes the products and communication. So in DevRel, we also work with the issue reports and suggestions from the community. That's what we're talking about tonight. We communicate directly with the people in the community suggesting edits to docs. That means you. At Microsoft, the hundreds of content developers like myself on our DevRel teams usually have a strong technical background from consulting or support positions. Most folks on our team come from Microsoft field support or consulting departments or had product expertise outside of Microsoft. Most also have some experience with project management, technical writing, blogging, or book writing, and some of them even have English degrees. So DevRel also includes our cloud developer advocates, the senior technical folks in a developer evangelism role who meet with customers, present at events, but also help us shape better docs and learn content. And then finally, DevRel is a strategic advantage for product teams because this type of outreach enhances adoption and integration. It provides authentic community engagement that goes beyond marketing and social media. Microsoft feels like its DevRel is a strategic advantage over competitors, especially in terms of our team's products, the SQL offerings. You'll measure this by how well our docs answer your questions and provide explanation for your problems without having to go and open up a trouble ticket or ask a support engineer or something like that. And if you've ever supported other Microsoft database or other non-Microsoft databases, and run into limitations with their documentation, I think you know exactly what I mean by strategic advantage. So in a way, DevRel is not marketing to CIOs and CEOs, it's marketing to developers and technical folks like you. There are products out there that we've all used and continue to use because good documentation and support experiences, because of easy adoption and smooth learning curves. So in that spirit of authentic community involvement, let's dive into how you can contribute to Microsoft Docs. There are hundreds of thousands of GitHub pages and issues and PRs are submitted to Docs every month for them. How can you be an effective part of that process and get your face on an article? So first, I'm going to talk about Docs and how you use them. So just a heads up on some features of the docs.microsoft.com site. The navigation bar at the top and the breadcrumbs menu should always let you know where you are and how to move around. Just to give you a map around navigating some specific docs, the table of contents on the left-hand side covers many different articles, and it's here that it's best to search inside a given technology stack. There's also a search bar at the top, but that's usually a little too broad. Then on the right, you'll see navigation inside the document itself. And then those headers are linkable directly. So any of the headers inside the document, if you want to send a colleague a link to a heading specifically within a long document, for example, you can click on the right-hand side, or you can click on the heading itself and a little anchor icon appears, a little link icon appears. And you can copy the URL with that page anchor appended to the URL, like you see at the top, that in this case, pound features in public preview. Now, where it makes sense, the same doc, one doc, might include different information for different versions of the product mentioned. This could be different versions of SQL Server, like 2014, 16, 17, 19, or different implementations of SQL Server in Azure. We may use the same article with various versions of content for Windows or Linux. For example, this is in the bottom left. This at the bottom left is a code snippet of what the markdown inside the document looks like, showing how one article might display different content depending on the version requested. So if a doc doesn't look quite right to you because of a version-specific detail, take a look at the version you're in that top left-hand corner. You can see this in the URL, or you can see it in the header of the article if it's got version-specific content. That version drop-down list in the top left-hand corner may come in handy. It doesn't appear for all articles, but it may come in handy, and it also affects the table of contents that you see by including or excluding certain articles. So for example, when you use that drop-down to select Azure Synapse Analytics, there are some things that appear and disappear out of the table of contents intelligently. Sometimes we'll handle versioning via tabs inside of a document, or the applies to row at the top of the article, or colorful note boxes that make sure that you know what version or SQL platform that the article covers and doesn't cover. Also note that for content that is specific to older versions of SQL Server before SQL Server 2014, we do still have ways to access that old content, even if some of them are through offline docs only. So offline docs, you say, like the old Books Online reference documentation built into Management Studio? Yes, it's still there. If your work environment, for example, is behind an air-gapped network, and there are many reasons for this, including the Microsoft Department of Defense project, for example, or if you work in high security environments, like a nuclear power plant, you can download version-specific docs offline through Management Studio. So our documentation is actually a strategic advantage against competitors in this way. There are very large organizations, including the public sector, like the Department of Defense, but also large private sector companies at the top of the Fortune list that want their development environments internal and secured away from the public internet. In the case of Microsoft documentation for SQL Server and Power BI and Azure and all sorts of other products, our documentation can be easily downloaded periodically and hosted internally to those environments so that they can get the best of both worlds, a secure network for development and access to fresh product documentation. They could do this through forking the GitHub repository, for example, or through Management Studio for SQL Server things, but you can download entire repos of the docs because they're, again, all hosted open source on GitHub. Some of our competitors, no joke, want to deliver a few thousand PDFs or a zipped website scraped images, or, I mean, come on, it's the 21st century. So this is how Microsoft is delivering documentation. So speaking of Management Studio, not a lot of people are still aware of this, but when you have text highlighted and you hit F1 in Management Studio, assuming your workstation does have access to the internet again, your browser should bring you right to the corresponding article for that word of syntax that you highlighted. So for example, sysdm exec sessions right here. If you have selected the help preference, there's a help preference in Management Studio for open in browser. This will bring you directly to the Microsoft Docs Online article, in this case for this dynamic management view. If you hit F1 on something that's highlighted and it doesn't bring you to the right article, or it brings you to a different article that you'd expect, that actually is a docs issue, and that's something you could let us know about. So how do you contribute to Microsoft Docs? Whether you find something outdated, wrong, missing, needed or otherwise, what's the best way to let Microsoft know? So there's three main ways. First is via the feedback channel, and that's actually not part of Docs, but I'm going to talk about it as a co-equal option here. The second is issues, and then the third is inside GitHub. Since the whole thing is inside GitHub, you can create a GitHub pull request yourself, just as if you were contributing to an open source project. So if you don't know what a pull request is, if you've never contributed to an open source project, don't worry, you can do this all through the browser. Contributing is easy without having to learn Git Bash or install anything, without having to know what a fork, a clone, a push, or a pull is. Of course, if you already work in Git or GitHub and you're familiar with pull requests in remote repositories, you can do that. And later we'll talk about creating a fork of the Microsoft Docs repo that you want to use. But in case of SQL Docs, a lot of DBAs aren't familiar with Git. I wasn't, as a consultant, very familiar with Git because I wasn't working in that all the time. And that's not a problem. Anyone can help us easily using the browser only. We even have a step-by-step tutorial here at this URL to guide you through the process of creating a pull request. We're obviously going to step through it again tonight as well in this presentation. By contributing to Microsoft Docs and for any product technology, you can be a part of the community by helping edit docs that everybody uses, and everybody will see your edits. We'll talk about the contributor designation at the top of the article, where we average around 16 million page views a month. And you can do all of this entirely in the browser if you want, with nothing to install. And you're about to get an inside peek at the process behind Microsoft's Docs as Code approach. Content teams like ours across all technologies inside Microsoft integrate with product teams, join their support reviews and team meetings. We coordinate schedules and releases. We found that full-time writers that have deep technical experience integrate better with engineering teams to produce better documents. That's what we are. So let's walk through it. To be clear, support issues don't belong in any of those three options that I said: feedback, issues, or pull requests. So make sure it's not a support issue like you're having a current problem right now. Similarly, the product feedback channel is not for support issues. It's for things like bugs and feature requests. The feedback options we're about to discuss are not Microsoft support. We have no SLA for response time. If you're having a problem or unexpected behavior or an outage, contact Microsoft support or your support partner. Only Docs issues belong in GitHub, and perhaps after you've resolved your support problem, you could contribute to the solution in a doc. We triage incoming issues and pull requests from GitHub, and if it sounds like a support issue, your issue will likely be closed up with a polite message and perhaps a link or two. Most of the good Docs issues that get attention are a request to fix something that is missing or outdated or wrong. Well, that's good. Or a request to add something that would have helped prevent an error or an outage. So if you've got an issue, how to submit really depends on you. Again, there's three options. The first is you have the product feedback or suggestions or reproducible bug reports. And that, again, doesn't belong in the Docs system. That's for support, or you can use this feedback tool. If you've been around a few years, you might remember the old Connect system with Connect items. A few years ago, those were migrated to the feedback.azure.com portal. That's the place for comments and suggestions for the products. That's external to us on the Docs team, but that's where a lot of really great usability ideas and bug reports come from, and it's open to the public. That's what this looks like. This is the SQL Server page of feedback.azure.com, where you can submit comments or suggestions and vote on ideas. You might see a lot of these on social media for when someone has a really good suggestion and they want to get the product team's attention with a lot of votes in its favor. So this isn't Docs. This isn't reviewed by my team, but rather directly by product engineer teams. This is the place for your comment or suggestion or bug report or idea if it doesn't fit into a documentation issue. And you can see here the dark theme for Management Studio has 1,811 votes. All right. So let's say you know you've got a documentation issue to suggest. This is the second option. You've got a conceptual issue or a request for additional content that you don't see or that you think is missing. You can simply put in a Git issue for the article. This is a way of letting us know something's wrong here, go fix it. We have goals to address these issues in a timely manner with some tracking of these internally, but we'll be honest, issues are triaged and might take days or weeks to get a satisfactory resolution. Not all issues become a documentation change immediately or ever, depending on what the issue is. Sometimes we'll close an issue if it has internally become a work item for a product team, for example. To create an issue, use the This Page button that you see on the bottom of the page. That brings you to the GitHub page where you're given an easy template to file a report about whatever you want to raise. So here's the new screen after you've logged into GitHub. You throw your comments here in the top and hit Submit New Issue. That's it. We'll take it from there. And if you weren't aware, by the way, GitHub has a dark mode, and it's very nice. I'm a huge fan of dark modes, as you can tell. You can change this in your GitHub page, in your GitHub settings, or when you're logged in, head to your GitHub profile page. I don't know how many of you like to work in dark themes apps or websites, but I like to work in dark theme apps and websites as much as I can. And if you're enthusiast like I am for dark mode websites, docs.microsoft.com also has a dark theme you can check out in the footer of any docs.microsoft.com website to change your theme. Also, dark mode I hear is coming for Microsoft Word and LinkedIn as well, and that's a big deal. All right, back to contributing. Third option. You've got a documentation issue and you want to suggest the edits yourself into the markdown of the documentation to fix a sentence or a typo, maybe, to add a link. You can click the edit button in the top right-hand corner of the document. Most documents have this, not all do, but most documents have an edit button in the top right-hand corner. Now this works like any pull request in GitHub works. Your changes to the markdown file will be proposed for merge, triaged, and reviewed by the article's author and its reviewers. The content team for the article takes it from there, replies to the pull request in its comments, makes edits if necessary, and then merges the code in. You'll be notified along the way with feedback directly from one person on the content team. So clicking the edit button on the article brings you here. This is the GitHub preview page for that article. This is actually the code page for the markdown file that is an article. From here, you then click the pencil button in the top right-hand header bar, the one I've got boxed in red. So the edit button, then the pencil button, and now you're actually looking at an editable in-browser option for the markdown itself, for the actual text to edit. Make your changes here. If you're not familiar with Markdown, it's actually really easy to understand once you get rolling. Even this old DBA learned it pretty quickly. And don't worry about it being perfect. Again, your edits do not have to be perfect. The content team will always review your content submission, potentially tweak it to Microsoft standards, make sure everything's linked up right before it's merged live. There are plenty of resources online for basic Markdown syntax, but if you don't get something quite right, don't sweat it. You can also then preview the changes with that red button right there to get a in-browser preview of the Markdown formatting. Then, once you've made your edits into the edit box, scroll to the bottom. Here you have a chance to commit your changes. And you're going to choose the second radio button here. Enter your pull request title and your comments right there. And then choose the create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request. That's what you want to do. You're starting a pull request. Unlike some open source projects, we don't allow you to commit code directly to our live repository, right? You'll notice how it gives a new branch a simple name, like your username dash patch dash and then a serial number. Don't worry about that. That name is not really important. If you're not familiar with GitHub terminology like branches and pull requests, again, don't worry. You don't have to be. Once you submit your pull request by clicking the green Propose Changes button, we take it from there. And we'll keep you updated as your pull request moves through the process. Again, you can do all of this, if you want, through your own tooling to create your own fork, branch it, push commits, and then push and create a pull request. That's what we do in the content team every day. If you just want to use the github.com website to handle the entire process for you, it's actually much easier. And we even use it sometimes for little edits. So once the pull request has been created, here's what it looks like after you've submitted it. Your pull request will start in an open status in the top left-hand corner. You can see that. But you can see this one here is already merged, which means it's been accepted and it's been pushed to a preview repository where it will soon be merged to the live production repo. And that usually takes hours to days to happen. You can see what GitHub did was automatically in the background create a fork and then create a branch name. Here it created a branch name in Hiroshi's name. So Hiroshi, that's the user right here, and it created a patch -297. And in the pull requests, it includes the commit that they made, which is in the pull request log right here with the red arrow. Pull requests can include many commits from many different files, all in the same pull requests, which can then get merged into the repo. The pull request log contains both automated and manually created messages. Automation for the merge engines, all the commits and the conversations and notes from anyone assigned inside Microsoft as well. You'll receive an email anytime anyone uses your username with the @ symbol, and you can respond in conversation at the bottom here with a comment button. Once your pull request is created, both you and Microsoft can review the changes that you're suggesting in the pull request. Click on the Files Changed tab to see an in-browser differential. Red is the old code, green is the new code, and the changed characters are highlighted there. So here you can see that someone has suggested a typo fix. Real easy to approve. Still wanted to make more changes to the file, even after you've created the pull request, it's not too late. You can issue another commit to the pull request. Simply click on the 3 dots icon here on the right-hand side and click the Edit File option. There you can submit another change to your same pull request, and that second commit will be included in the pull request. Now, after you've submitted your pull request, it's in Microsoft's hands. You can sit back. We got it from here, and we'll let you know if we have any more questions or if we have a status update. So there are your 3 options. A couple important notes here. Not all articles have the feedback or edit buttons. We haven't enabled this workflow for some document types. And the documentation feedback button is not support. None of these are support, and none of these have an SLA for response time. Now, what's most helpful for Microsoft and what gives you contribution credit? That's the third option, the pull request. That's actually what we prefer to see. That's the most helpful thing you can do, and it's the only way you get your little face on the bubble at the top of the article. If you've contributed via a pull request, we merge your pull request into the document, you will get your GitHub account pick and a link to your profile on the top of the document that's going to be seen by millions of users of your technology. The folks listed here are those inside Microsoft and external that have submitted pull requests to the article that have been merged in. Now, you only get your name and logo on an article for a pull request, not for an issue. So if you're not sure how it should change, don't worry, give it a shot. If it's not quite right, if it's not formatted perfectly, we'll take it from there. We'll adjust, but at least it gets fixed, right? Now, for bulk changes like capitalization and naming conventions, we actually have better ways internally of searching and editing those. So maybe just submit one file and then make some comments to let us know. Let us handle bulk updates. We've had a couple folks issue pull requests with hundreds of changes for capitalization or punctuation, about half of which were correct. Instead, maybe just issue a pull request for that one file, make some notes, let us know. And then for images, graphics, charts, if you think that there should be an image or a graphic change or a chart change, you don't have to do that yourself. We have designers to get the images updated in a standardized way. No need to worry about that yourself, just let us know. And then finally, capitalization of various features and products inside Microsoft is one of the more nuanced bits there is about document publishing. Marketing always wins these arguments, regardless of how the product documentation evolved through its development process. We just had a big pull request to come through to make a lot of capitalization changes that were mostly misguided. So again, that task is tricky enough when you have all the information directly from inside sources. We'll handle capitalization of product names. We'll handle that part. And yes, if you spot inconsistencies between marketing content, documentation content, training content, you should know we're regularly discussing and working on that stuff internally. Don't be afraid to point something out. For example, product names and features and phrasing are difficult to get just right. And it's trickiest when a generic word is in the product name. Just because we have a product called Azure SQL Database doesn't mean that every word database is capitalized. And then Azure SQL Managed Instance versus a SQL Managed Instance, two different ways. It depends on how you use it in the sentence, whether or not it should be capitalized. And this is even more difficult for our international partners and customers because capitalization usually means a product or service name shouldn't be translated. But a lowercase common noun of the same term should be translated. Inconsistency in capitalization confuses translators and customers alike. So that consistency is important. And so are the core goals of our brand voice. Above all, be simple and be human. So if we can do better to meet that goal, just let us know. So now that you've seen how you can use GitHub to contribute to GitHub, contribute to docs on GitHub, let's briefly show you some of the inside baseball and talk about how we use GitHub to host Microsoft documentation. It might surprise you to learn that Microsoft Docs are not edited in Word documents, but rather they're edited in code. I use Visual Studio Code all day long. Others use Code or Azure Data Studio, which is kind of the same thing in the background. So it's edited in code, usually in Markdown or in YAML. Markdown is a lightweight text markup language. It's created for formatting rich text with a plain text editor. GitHub has their own formal implementation of Markdown called GitHub Flavored Markdown. Many different online sites use Markdown for their content, including GitHub, GitLab, Reddit, Stack Exchange, Bitbucket, Drupal. If you've used any of those, you've probably been using Markdown this whole time. Then YAML is another plain text markup language that's often used for configuration files. It behaves much like XML, but it's indented like Python. And so it has some formatting features from JSON. And it's used less for displaying article text and more for structured content for things like tables of contents or frequently asked questions, both of which work better for search engine optimization in YAML. Most articles are in Markdown, so we spend most of our time using Visual Studio Code or Azure Data Studio to edit them. And yes, we on the SQL Docs team work in Management Studio and Azure all day long too. We have other tools to help with automated link checking, syntax formatting, bulk updates, and a series of include files to tokenize things like some product names. And we have a rich set of metadata for each article and we track traffic. And we do pay attention to how articles perform in terms of search engine optimization and traffic patterns and trends, all driven through Azure Analytics and custom Custo queries. We try to improve poorly performing articles, break up articles that are too varied in topic or too long. We use many metrics to track the performance of an article, including, for example, if you copy text from the article, that actually is good. That shows up as good in our metrics. The article helps you out. Or if you click through, scroll, dwell, the same kind of metrics that any website these days uses to measure how effective the web page is without capturing any personal information or wider tracking information, of course. And then everything is pushed through GitHub and built multiple times a day with our own custom build processes and repositories. We have folks on the team who are very good at Git, and we have a robust release management process behind the scenes, and we'll talk more about that. For big article updates, we actually have systems to handle release branches for when we want to work on documentation for months and then release a new product all at once, like during Ignite. So here's some behind the scenes of how Microsoft Docs in Git works, specifically in GitHub, where all the Microsoft documentation is managed. If you're new to Git and don't understand this, don't worry, we'll explain. To contributors and community, all this is managed for you. So this is the basic GitHub workflow. This may be a little bit of a deep dive, but for those of you who work in GitHub, this might actually be some interesting inside info. A repository like SQL Docs is where the source is housed and where the website engine pulls Markdown to present the live pictures you see in the websites. A fork is a copy of the repo associated to your account in GitHub. We each on the SQL Docs team have created forks of the repo in our GitHub accounts. A clone is a copy of the fork that you have brought down locally. So the fork exists up in GitHub, a clone exists on your workstation, and the files are copied onto your workstation so that you can make edits. To tell the two apart, a common convention is to reference your remote fork as origin, that's the one up in GitHub. And the code base you eventually push to, which is the repository itself, is called upstream. These are called remote names or remotes, and these are just common naming conventions. You can actually choose any name you want. You will have an origin and an upstream for each repo you work in. So when you go to make changes to a file or to add or remove files, you'll create a working branch inside your fork, inside your fork's clone rather, that is relevant to the chunk of the changes you'll be making. So you want a branch to contain only the changes for a specific feature, for example, or an issue that you're addressing, so that it can be treated as a block of changes of commits that go back up the stream. So when you're done, first the branch is committed locally to your local clone. Then it's pushed to your origin in GitHub, the fork of the code in your account. Then you issue a pull request asking Microsoft Docs repository to accept changes from your forked repository so that your changes can be merged from your fork into the main repository. Now, to explain things a little closer to the reality of how we work with them internally, we actually have two repositories in the Microsoft Docs account. And you don't have to worry about this if you're submitting PRs outside of the browser. The SQL Docs repository drives the website. But like true professionals, we don't develop against production, right? We only develop against a preview repository, so SQL Docs PR, which is not visible to the public and allows us to work in and preview the merged state of our changes in the actual live repository. This build process to the live website occurs usually like twice a day and is gated by a team of build reviewers. But to bring us back full circle, when you contribute to Docs and you contribute to the live repo only, and again, you can do all this entirely through the browser. If you want to use your own tools to contribute, you don't have to access the access to the preview repository, only the public repo. But once your PR is filed, again, we take it from there. Let me know if there's any questions, Kenny. I'm actually not able to see the chat right now. I'll pause here. Are there any questions?
No, I think you are good to go.
All right. Well, I just have a little bit more. So let's talk about this. If there's any MVPs in the audience, there's actually a little link you can add to the end of your doc that'll track it for your engagement in social media. Let's see. Let me know if you have any questions about that. In February, we introduced a new dynamic recommended content in the footer of many Microsoft Docs articles. You've probably seen this. The links in the content are determined by a machine learning solution based on a model that describes customer behaviors within our document set. And we've really seen positive metrics on tracking traffic to recommended files so far. And so we see this as helpful in helping people find what they need. And then also new in Docs, you can add certifications to your login to docs.microsoft.com by connecting your certification profile from Microsoft Learn. And that profile is also connected to Pearson VUE. So all you got to do is go to your profile in Learn or in Docs, go to certifications, and then click on Connect Certification Profile. You can, by doing that, get notifications for certification renewals and a lot more, and link directly to Pearson VUE to go schedule the exams that you're pursuing. All right, well, that's actually it. So how many of you have actually used the edit button or created a PR or an issue before?
I have never done that, but I think I will.
There you go. It was super easy, right?
Yeah. I did
then,
have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask about the linking of the certifications. How does that work?
Yeah, so if you connect your Microsoft account with Microsoft Learn now, if you've gotten a certification recently, you had to link your Pearson VUE account, or you have the opportunity to link your Pearson VUE account to your Learn account. And so the certifications that show up there, it's all integrated now. And then you can go through Docs and get notifications while you're browsing Docs that, hey, your certification is about to notify, and they're pushing out a lot more features to more closely integrate that, because there's a lot of internal metrics that Microsoft has to drive Azure certification professionals, right? Azure certified professionals. So you're going to start seeing a lot more integration there with Learn.
That's really interesting. I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah. So any questions you have? Anything that you think is helpful or needs improvement about the docs? If you've, how many of you have used the feedback before to like vote on a new feature or something like that?
I've definitely done that on the new stuff and in the old Connect days.
Yeah.
I did that too. Yes.
Well, good. Yeah, good. So obviously that's a place for that, right? It's a different kind of suggestions right there. And then sometimes, you know, we don't really usually see that. We actually have a triage team before it gets to us, but sometimes we'll see issues or pull requests to come through that are not exactly on target with something that is scope limited to docs, right? But good. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up unless you have any more questions.
Let me take one more look in the chat here to see if I see any questions. Nope. I think you covered it. That was awesome.
Yeah, TempDB. I'm seeing the chat right now. TempDB, capital TempDB. I actually had to look this up just last week. It is TempDB with a capital T and a capital D and B, unless it's not, and then it's just all lowercase. Yeah, I forget the nuance on that kind of thing, but we have lots of those kind of things internally, and unfortunately, they're not like strictly enforced in a lot of cases, and so inconsistencies get out. And then, you know, sometimes engineers write documents. We try to get a lot of engineers and product managers to write those documents too, and so they will have, you know, years of internal conversations associated with things, and marketing gets involved at the end with names of things like that. And so that's why there's a lot of code names and a lot of inertia to the internal conversations that happen inside that leak out into docs sometimes. That's how all that happens. All right, well, look, if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter at SQL Docs, and I think I gave you my contact information before. It's been a real pleasure to present this presentation actually for the first time. So if it looked a little rusty or if I was stumbling around, it's because this is the first time this presentation has been given publicly, and I did it for my old hometown user groups. How about that?
Thank you very much, William. We really appreciate it. We miss you, buddy.
I miss you guys too.
Very much.
Although
So.
I do love the weather up here a lot more, I'll be honest. Oh, hi, Lolo.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.